Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Wednesday, December 9th. I'm Khalil Kato with the details. In our top story this evening, the police have launched a manhunt for two escaped prisoners, Veron Primus and Ulrich Hansen, who both stand accused of murder. The men escaped lawful custody while being inmates at Her Majesty's prisons in Kingstown. This is the second time that Primus has escaped prison. This morning, the police issued a release and Commissioner Colin John has been on radio alerting citizens of the escaped prisoners. He said on NBC Radio that he learned of the escape at about 6 this morning.
I want to inform the general public that this morning about 6:15, I was informed by the superintendent of prisons that Mr. Veron Primus and Mr. Ulrich Hansen, two prisoners charged for murder, escaped from the Kingstown prison facility. The number 3 was in the police force, along with the prison authority. We are mobilizing all our troops. We are using different media, we are using social media and other mediums to obtain information that can result in the recapturing of those prisoners as soon as possible.
A 34-year-old Veron Primus was serving a sentence for escaping lawful custody while awaiting trial for murder. Ulrich Hansen, a 29-year-old laborer, was awaiting trial for a series of offenses, including murder, robbery, and burglary. Hansen's address was stated as Myro in the Southern Grenadines and Roseau on the mainland. The commissioner has appealed to the public to cooperate with the police and be on the lookout for the escaped prisoners and also to be careful.
So, fortunately, first of all, I would say we would like to inform the authority. Do not approach them the danger and make sure that you stay as safe as possible. While I said before, once you get the information or you want to have anything relating to them and the information, please inform the relevant authorities. The police number you can call is 4571-211, or you can call 911 or 999.
Commissioner John told SVG-TV News that they have some leads which they are following as the manhunt continues. Meantime, investigations have been launched at Her Majesty's prisons into the escape of Primus and Hansen. On October 1st, 2019, Primus escaped from Her Majesty's prisons in Kingstown, but later contacted his lawyer and turned himself in. Both men are considered armed and very dangerous, and the police have asked that if anyone sees them, to immediately contact the police at telephone numbers 457-1211, 456-1102, or Her Majesty's prisons at 457-1937. St. Vincent and the Grenadines today recorded 3 new COVID-19 cases. One case is a returning Vincentian who arrived from Canada on December 8th with a negative RT-PCR test result and tested positive on entry screening for SARS-CoV-2, the virus which causes COVID-19. The second and third cases are American nationals who arrived from the USA also on Monday, December 8th. They arrived with negative RT-PCR results and tested positive on entry screening. The Ministry of Health said that all of these travelers are in mandatory quarantine and will be isolated until cleared by 2 negative tests. Contact tracing and testing has commenced. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has now recorded a total of 90 COVID-19 cases, 80 of which have recovered. There are 10 active cases, all arriving from countries categorized as high risk, such as the USA and the UK. The ministry said that an increase in cases is expected as persons come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for Christmas and the traditional winter season. It therefore underscored the need for everyone to strictly comply with the existing quarantine protocols, as this is extremely important if residents are to continue to live with minimal restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Travelers who complete their 5 days in an approved hotel must also continue to quarantine at home for the entire additional 9 days in compliance with the 14-day medical officer's quarantine order. And any interruptions to this 14-day quarantine should only be with the specific authorization from a port health officer or according to established resort protocols. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted Caribbean countries economically, causing a decrease in government revenues, high unemployment, and reduced income. This assessment was made by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves last evening as he spoke at the 6th Virtual Caribbean Economic Forum held virtually, which addressed the topic, Repositioning Caribbean Economies, Lessons from 2020. Prime Minister Gonzalez, who addressed the forum in his capacity as the current chair of CARICOM, said that the pandemic has left the Caribbean region in a very difficult state.
In one or two countries, you may see the revenues holding a little. Guyana has significant economic growth, but that's a special circumstance with oil and gold. So people are being laid off. People are having lower incomes, those who have not been laid off. Government revenues declining, the debt is increasing. The deficit is widening significantly because even in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we see year on for the first 10 months, last year compared to this year, our revenues are up about 5%, but expenditure is up 20% because we have to take care of people. We have to take care of firms, families, and we have to try and get some investments going.
Making reference to the gross domestic product from the World Economic Outlook of October 2020, the Prime Minister said that even if there is an uptick next year in the region of 4%, this will not be enough to take the Caribbean countries out of the economic crisis they currently face. He said that the regional grouping, however, has put together a CARICOM commission on the economy.
There's a declaration which was made by this committee and the first commission, and the first point is this. It says, now is the time for action, not to wait and see, nor to worry about moral hazard, nor stick rigidly to fiscal strictures and targets, even though, of course, we all have a long-term commitment to fiscal sustainability and to macroeconomic and financial stability. But we are going to require of the international financial institutions a level of support that we have not seen hitherto. And we are going to have new instruments and new initiatives. Alejandro pointed to that, but I'm not so sure yet that I got from him quite the extent to which the IMF may be prepared to go. They've gone some way, I acknowledge, but this is a matter of great concern for livelihoods.
He added further that Caribbean countries, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have handled the COVID-19 pandemic fairly well by protecting the people from the infection and death.
And we have handled the COVID situation fairly well, but that's from the standpoint of infections and that's the standpoint from deaths and the like. But Heavenly Father, the economic situation is extraordinarily difficult and people are becoming very, very restless across the region, workers in several countries. And it's going to get worse in the next few months, not better, because we're not going to see yet the uptick for the upcoming season in a significant way to offset the problems in the first three quarters of next year.
Prime Minister Gonzalez said he is looking forward for some positive impact on the tourism sector from source markets because of the use of the COVID-19 vaccine. But in the meantime, the countries will have to look to other sources to improve their economies.
Maybe when the vaccine has had some impact in our tourism source markets, we are going to probably see some positive signs, revitalization. In the meanwhile, we have to do a number of creative things, and we can talk about them. But certainly, a lot of countries are going to have to look to construction. St. Vincent has to look to that. St. Vincent and Grenadines, and to agriculture and fisheries, and hopefully medical cannabis and probably yachting tourism.
Meanwhile, Barbados' Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, has called for the establishment of a Caribbean Recovery and Resilient Trust Fund to help the region deal with the impact of natural and other disasters, including the coronavirus pandemic, which has severely impacted the economies of the 15-member Regional Integration Grouping. Speaking at last night's Caribbean Economic Forum, Mottley said that while the region has been able to collaborate in a number of areas to deal with issues confronting the Caribbean, she still questioned whether we can work together and move together as a grouping in order to be able to unlock greater liquidity and new instruments.
We would like, for example, to see a Caribbean Recovery and Resilience Trust that will allow us to be able to focus not on all things, but if we can focus on financing to build resilience in the first 6 months after a climate event. What is it that the country needs to build up in order to accommodate the damage that comes from a hurricane in the first 6 months? We need to make sure that we have shelters. We need to make sure that we have the capacity in terms of healthcare to keep people healthy and our public health situation, because water obviously is contaminated post-event, climatic event. We need to have adequate distribution for water and sanitation generally within the system. And we need to make sure that we can sustain people, because what we've learned from the pandemic is if people are not earning, of course, they can't live and they can't add to the total value of what is being produced in the economy.
Motley, who shared the panel with Dr. Gonzalez and the director of the IMF's Western Hemisphere Department, Alejandro Werner, warned that if the region is not careful, it will have to focus on alternative plans of relocating people from certain areas and even certain islands, a move she hopes they will never have to make.
So these are some of the regrettable issues that we're going to have to confront going forward. And I think that if we come together to work on the economic framework, strengthening our fiscal frameworks, generally strengthening public financial management reforms in the region, if you really look at it, a lot of the problems that Caribbean countries have gotten into have come as a result of runaway expenditure in state-owned enterprises, whose governance leaves a lot to be desired and whose over expenditure has put pressure on central government and the fiscal deficits and increased debt over time. And similarly, we need to improve generally to provide for greater transparency in terms of debt, as well as a better governance framework for debt.
This country's Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, has responded to the LIAT suspension of operations to St. Vincent and the Grenadines as talks between LIAT and officials from Barbados and SVG continue. The most recent update from the regional court-appointed administrator, Cleveland Seaforth, comes 4 days after the carrier was forced to stop commercial flights into the two countries on the grounds that it needed new flight arrangements to operate. Speaking to ABS News, Seaforth said that the airport authorities in SVG wished to undertake the ground handling operations themselves.
The airport authority in St. Vincent want to do the handling and not LIAT, and so we are in dialogue with them on the matter, and my expectation is that with respect to St. Vincent, we should have an answer from the board of directors on Friday. Discussions continue with Barbados. We cannot quite get a response from them as yet. In Barbados, the issue is we maintain we have a valid flight permit to fly into Barbados until July 2024. Barbados is saying not quite so, but we're not exactly sure what is the legislation they're using to say that. So the discussions are ongoing.
Seaforth says CARICOM has shown interest in mediating the discussions so that the matter can be resolved quickly. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Gonzalez said the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines welcomes LIAT flying again to SVG. However, given the current situation which the airline is under, there are some things which will have to be put in place administratively before the airline resumes operations here.
I see my brother Gaston has made some public comments. I don't think that the people at the administration's office for LIAT, remember there's LIAT 1974 Limited and LIAT 1974 Limited in administration. There's a legal process which is going through. The shareholders don't have anything now to do with LIAT. There's no independent management. There's a court-appointed administrator.
More than 40 communities have registered with the Nine Mornings Committee to participate in the 2020 festivities, which start on December 16th. The lighting up will again be a big feature of the community activities, with Paget Farm being out front with its light up set for this Friday. Chairman of the Nine Mornings Committee, Orande Bomani Charles, said that the response from the communities has been great and more communities have come on board, especially from the Grenadines.
Yes, well, most of the communities across St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the long history of Nine Mornings would have had some involvement at some point or other. Some would have stayed away for some time, and some would have continued over the years. We noticed that we are seeing a return of some of the communities. For example, Union Island, they are returning with actual 9 mornings activities this year, taken up by the Easterville Committee, and they will be lighting Humalta Square, and they will also be having 9 mornings activities as well.
Charles said it's not too late for communities that are still interested to register. He said it is possible that some financial assistance will be provided for the individuals or groups.
At the 8th of the month, so we still have a few days to go, and any other community who wishes to participate in this year's festivities, feel free to contact us here at the Department of Culture and register. We recognize community groups and organizations and individuals who may wish to register their private homes, who may wish to light up various community squares. Come to the department, submit a program and a budget, and we would assess and see how we could contribute to your efforts.
Charles is also reminding persons that their efforts are being recognized and rewarded, as communities are judged in various categories in the different zones, and there are prizes to be won.
Have not really changed that much from last year, so it's still we still have the zonal lighting competition, national lighting, best lit garden, best lit house, best nativity scene, best commercial building, 9 mornings community, best 9 mornings community, best Christmas community, best community on parade, best community song, and best local Christmas song. Best lit commercial building, there's a cash prize of $1,000 for that, for first prize. Second prize is $750, third prize $500. Best nativity scene, for example, there's a $1,000 cash prize for the first prize. Best 9 mornings community, $3,000 cash prize. Best Christmas community, $3,000 cash prize. And best community, most popular local Christmas song is $1,500 cash prize for the first prize.
Judging starts on Sunday, December 20th, and the announcement of winners will be made on December 24th at Heritage Square during the last 9 mornings event. In more local news, regional leaders on Tuesday ended the 7th Summit of Heads of States and Governments of the Caribbean Community and the Republic of Cuba, agreeing to further strengthen their existing relationship and again issued a call for an end to the decades-old trade and economic embargo placed on Havana by the United States. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, delivering remarks at the opening in his capacity as head of government of SVG, as well as the current chairman of CARICOM, expressed appreciation on behalf of CARICOM to the government of the Republic of Cuba for the arrangements made for the holding of the summit at such an exceptional time. He also expressed the gratitude of CARICOM for Cuba's solidarity in the provision of public health personnel to Caribbean nations to reinforce and enhance the response capacity in facing the public health challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the declaration issued after the summit, the leaders also rejected the imposition of unilateral coercive measures and, in that context, called for an immediate and unconditional end to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade implemented by the government of the United States of America against Cuba. They also called for the termination of the U.S. persecution of Cuban financial transactions, the relentlessness of which has increased. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves headed the SVG delegation, which also comprised the Minister of State with responsibility for Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kiesel Peters, Minister of Education Curtis King, Health Minister Sinclair Jimmy Prince, SVG's Ambassador to CARICOM Alan Alexander, and SVG's Ambassador to Cuba Ellsworth John, along with other officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Jose Manuel Ventura led the Cuban delegation to the summit, which was chaired by Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, President of the Council of State and the Council of Ministers of the Republic of Cuba. A 10-year-old Noah Campbell of the Trumuka Government School has copped this year's Caribbean Child Research Poster Competition for St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the second consecutive year. The Trumuka Government School student won with his poster, COVID-19 and Child Rights, that depicted how COVID-19 has affected children, which Campbell referred to as mean. 15 Caribbean countries participated in the poster competition, and there were 140 entries. The Trumuka Government School had 2 poster entries in the top 10, with Campbell emerging the winner. The University of the West Indies hosted the event last week, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, Campbell was unable to attend the prize-giving ceremony. Police here are investigating a shooting incident at Redemption Sharps last evening, which left 1 man dead. The deceased has been identified as former seafarer Callamore Edwards, better known as Shortman, formerly of Petty Bodell, but was at the time residing at Redemption Sharps. The incident is said to have occurred at around 10:30 p.m. This is the second shooting death recorded in the country over the last 4 days. Edwards' death brings the homicide count for this year to 31 thus far.